From 13 ABC, Conklin and Company, with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First, with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Today on the program, Mitt is it, or it certainly looks that way, that he will cruise to the convention this summer, becoming the GOP's presidential nominee. That plus a pair of local organizations losing their leaders, one to Cleveland and another to ProMedica. And Toledo City Council taking on the issue of the labor dispute at the Red Cross. Should it get involved at all? Those topics and more in Take 3, coming up a little bit later this morning. You've probably heard that after more than 3 decades, 13 ABC's Stan Stachek is riding off into the sunset, retiring from 13 ABC. We'll go in depth with the new chief meteorologist, Jay Berschbach. What you may not know about Jay, who of course has been an integral part of 13 ABC's ultra-successful morning show. But first, seems like there's a Metro Park everywhere here in Northwest Ohio, except downtown. But this week, plans unveiled or revealed once again to make that happen. Here to talk about that, Metro Parks' new executive director, Steve Madewell, and Scott Carpenter, PR director from the Metro Parks. Great to have both of you on this morning. And Steve, welcome to
thank you very much.
Toledo on behalf of thousands of Toledoans this morning. We say welcome.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. We're delighted to be on your show, and let's talk about the park.
Yeah, let's do it. The Middle Grounds Project, Scott, as it's called, and we had heard another term used for the Middle Grounds a long time ago, but I won't resurrect that again.
Okay.
I think people who have been here for a long, long time remember that. But this Middle Grounds Project, in the works for a couple of years, but now re-energized. Tell us about it.
Well, down on right downtown on the riverfront will be the next new Metro Park, and yeah, the news you're referring to is a gift from the Rotary Club of Toledo, which is has a long history of service, and to mark their 100th anniversary on May 3rd, they're going to give a substantial gift to Metro Parks to use for the Middle Grounds Project.
Yeah, $300,000. You talk about substantial, and Steve, you've been on board only here for a couple of weeks now, right?
Well, this is going into my 4th one.
You know, for a 4th week, coming from Lake County.
That's right.
But we were talking about what drew you to this job, and this project specifically, a big part of it, it sounds like.
Well, I've always been fascinated with the importance of conservation in an urban setting, and those of us who are very concerned about, you know, how we use our resources, we recognize that urban areas are very important in how we reclaim them, reuse them, recycle them. And downtown Toledo is a beautiful place. I've had a good time since I've been here, walking around, taking in the sights, looking at the older architectural structures and features, and just marveling at what they have to offer to the depth and the character of the community. This project downtown at Middle Grounds, we've got a great opportunity to interface with a number of different players and partners, and how well we do that, I think really is going to have an impact on how that property and how that project completely unfolds.
Yeah, the Middle Grounds Project, I think you mentioned seamless. You want it to be seamless, Scott. And we take a look behind us, our mural here, and at the schematic, this is kind of the vision, as we saw this earlier in the newspaper this past week, and then we had it on our air as well. But talk about the seamless nature of this, because we have the Anthony Wayne Bridge, Promenade Park getting a cash infusion to redevelop that property, the steam plant coming to life again, we hope, with news this week. So talk about this being a seamless situation.
Sure. I mean, I think our vision is that a family going down to use to visit the riverfront on a Saturday morning, it doesn't care that Metro Parks property ends here and city property begins there. They want a seamless experience and a good experience. So that's what we want. We want it to be a oh, you got pictures. We want it to be the riverfront, and certainly, you know, the Metro Park property will have the things that a Metro Park has, and others will bring different elements to it. But we do want to look at it as a whole, and as we do our community.
Steve, you know, everybody's familiar with our park system. I mean, I think that I can say that it is one of our crown jewels. I think Toledoans, Northwest Ohioans are just proud of it. They help pay for it. Sure. And you've been to all the parks, I'm sure, and walked a good portion of them. Are there any similarities that would go into this particular project? When you talk about, you know, completely different situation. Oak openings, you've got Farnsworth and Pearson Park. Is there anything that could compare to what this project is planned to be?
Well, you know, there are some things that are important to remember, and Scott alluded to them, and that's the river frontage itself. I mean, the Maumee River is a tremendous natural asset for this community and this region. It's the largest tributary into Lake Erie, and it's a very significant influence on how our city and how this region developed and evolved. Any property that is along the river is important for migratory birds, and this little piece of property we have that we're calling Middle Grounds is a nice little oasis in an urban setting. And so what we would like to think is those elements, the fact that it's on the river, the fact that it's part of our local history and heritage here, and the fact that it's got these natural attributes, makes it very comparable to many of the same elements that people come to metro parks to explore and to visit. It's a little smaller, you know, it's certainly in an urban environment, but perhaps scarcity makes those resources even more valuable.
Yeah, and you talked to, it's the Maumee, of course.
Sure.
Is this similarity, side cut, Farnsworth? I mean, that's why people love those. I mean, one of the reasons people love those parks is the access to the Maumee.
And the things that we find is, you know, if we look at, and I'm glad you brought up our other river parks, because if you look at them, each one of them have their own attributes and their own merit. But if we think of them as a linear corridor along the river, and we start to say that there's a little bit more gravity and significance to the amount of river frontage that we have, and it becomes a linear forest. So from an open space perspective, it starts getting more significant. When we first started talking about the Middle Grounds project, you know, one of the things that immediately came to my mind was the fact that we can't just look at this in a vacuum. We have to think about how the cityscape, the streetscape is going to look, how we're going to interface with all of our neighbors, both the railroad to the south, the high-level bridge that the Department of Transportation is reworking. And when you consider it's going to be the last and the only suspension bridge that the Department of Transportation, that becomes a story unto its own. And of course, we have great neighbors further downstream with Owens Corning, and then moving right down to the city investments. All of those things, if we can get them to hinge together and come together, and we start having the opportunities to have urban trails, urban hiking opportunities, and those things become really neat unto their own.
Yeah, Scott, we've been talking about this. It's been talked about for years, something like that. And while you got the infusion this past week, or you're going to get the gift from the Rotary, and you spent money already in remediating the property, you know, there are no guarantees, and there are always some impediments along the way. But best case scenario, if everything comes together here, when might people start to see things really happening down there where you're looking at a vision where you might have this park finished?
We've got a 2-year time frame to work with while the bridge is under construction, because they're going to be using our property as staging area. But at the conclusion of that 2 years, we should be completed, well underway, at least with phase 1, which is what you showed on the screen here a minute ago.
And what, you know, a lot of folks, when you're looking at a park project like this, you know, the funding acquisition is initial phase, and we were very fortunate getting support from Marcy Captor to make that happen. Okay, and then Scott mentioned the next phase, which was the inventory assessment, looking at the property, seeing what's there, doing the cleanup. And Scott, what were our folks telling us? Dave Zink, who's been running this project, doing a great job of it. He was telling us today that how many tons of material was removed?
Over 8,000 tons. It's even more impressive in pounds. It's 173 million pounds of debris, from soil to steel to just about anything you can imagine being dumped.
So that's where your trucks were when I was looking for some work done at the other.
Please.
So when people say, "What have you been doing down there?" Let me tell you what we've been doing down there.
You know, as somebody who has worked at all the parks, Scott, you've been all over the place in working with us. This is something different for you. I mean, the construction of a brand new facility. Tell us, has that recharged your batteries a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's new and it's old. You know, Metro Park started at side cut, so a river frontage park was is in our DNA, and all of our first parks were along the Maumee River, so this is it's very appropriate for us. But yeah, I have the last new Metro Park was Wildwood Preserve back in the 70s. So this is an exciting time to be here. It's not something that happens every day that you open a new park.
Well, we want to see it come to fruition. Steve Madewell, welcome to town.
Thank you very much.
Great to have both of you on the program, and best of luck with this project, the Middle Grounds, as you move forward. And we'll be checking back in with you. We appreciate it. We'll see you at the park.
All righty.
All right. Back on Conklin and Company in just a minute.